Hey, what's going on, guys? Kalamazi here, and tonight I want to talk to you all a bit about the 10.15 demo changes that were announced yesterday. Now, I made a video talking about what they are, what it means, all that kind of stuff, but I woke up today, spent the first 4 hours of my day making a feedback document on the changes, because I think that while I'm not totally in sync with those changes, I think that some of them are okay-ish, but overall it's a step back for demonology. The points they brought up in the blue post are actually relevant and need to be addressed in different ways. So tonight, that video, I guess this video, we're covering all that. All the same stuff as usual. Week Wars add-ons down below. Twitch, Discord links if you want to hop in there and grab them for free. Social media up here, Twitter, Patreon, all kind of stuff you want to support there, which I appreciate a million times. Thank you for support on Patreon, guys. And yeah, let's get right into it. Alrighty, so we are on PTR. This is the new talents, Shadowflame Acolyte, Fell Covenant, all that stuff. I'm gonna say off the bat, number one, I am tired. It is 5 in the morning. I have not slept much since the changes hit yesterday. I've been working a lot on feedback and rating and streaming and everything else. If I stutter and stumble through here, I'm sorry. It is what it is. Number two, if you want to link to this, links to the document down below in the description or comment section, wherever I put it. I don't know. But yes, I posted this earlier on Twitter and on the forums and everything, and it talks about the demonology changes. And it talks a bit about what they mentioned in the blue post for demonology, citing that number one here, we're working to reduce the peaks and valleys of demonology's throughput by depowering called dreadstalkers, which is point number one of this document. This will allow us to compensate by increasing the throughput of demonology's other rotational spells, and we hope to have tuning soon. Now, outside of that, demonology has problems, just sustained damage, burst profiles, general tuning. Demonic cores were also talked about here as well with the removal of demonic knowledge. But first off the bat here is Ripped from the Portal being third dog and Dreadstalker damage. The removal of Ripped from the Portal, third Dreadstalker, is at the center of recent feedback. This talent is part of our tier bonus in Sepulchre, which it was, and was well received by all. Having a third dog in each cast meant the ability was stronger in both AoE and single target, Dreadlash from the shadows, all that stuff, Carnivorous Stalkers, giving us more sustained damage, whether it's single target or AoE, being a 20-second cooldown. That is, it's a pretty short cooldown, and it leads to more sustain. Giving you a third shot, or third core from the third dog expiring means more hand cooldown cast more frequently. All the above. The recent blue post mentions that Dreadstalkers contribute to our peaks and valleys in the current damage profile, but that's not really the case. And here's a damage profile from the current rank 1 Rashok parse, which you can see here. Yes, dogs are a good part of our damage here, 13% in the overall, I guess, entire parse, whatever you want to call it. Looking at the actual peak here on pull, dogs aren't that big. They're 9.5. Pit Lords 19%, Tyrant is 13%, Imps are 12%, and dogs are sitting here at 9.6. Which, to be fair, you have 6 dogs out here because Tyrant extensions and everything else, and the 4-piece is buffing your dogs, right? So they are relatively strong, but they are not contributing to this peak here. Dogs are contributing. Not much, man. I mean, they might hit 100k here and they dreadbite a few times with just big buffs and potions and everything else, but like you're sitting at what, 70k for the most part here on the big peaks here. Overall, just like the melee being 15, I guess 20ish k. Your overall burst here, you're hitting 1 million DPS. Like, dogs aren't really that big of a part of this the more you look at it. Now, if you zoom out to like the in-between with sustained damage being a thing, dogs are second highest, right, at 15%, but Demon Bolt's higher at 26% because you're casting majority bolts, dogs on cooldown, and then hand cooldowns, which are fueled by demonic core stacks, which you get a third from your dog set due to the third dog, which fuels even more handed cooldown cast, leading to more sustain. So on the contrary, I think Dreadstalkers and having that third dog around actually leads to more sustain by having a short cooldown, giving you more cores, which can be more handed cooldown cast, and also mean more Demon Bolt cast, right? I also took it here, I mentioned here, talking a bit about the reason why Demo bursts so much. On pull, you've got Nether Portal, Pit Lord, Tyrant, Tier Bonus, Iridius Fragment, and Power Infusion. A minute 45 later, Tyrant, Clash Trinket, Tier Cell, all that stuff. 340, Nether Portal, Pit Lord, Tyrant, Tier Bonus, Iridius Fragment, Clash Trinket as well this time, and Power Infusion. And then it happens again at 6:15. The fact of the matter is, this is a cooldown, 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 cooldown essentially, cooldown, cooldown, and cooldown. Being able to pair 7 cooldowns together leads to an incredible amount of burst. And your Clash Trinket, your 4-piece, Iridius Fragment, and sort of Power Infusion as well, all lead to just further exacerbating the issue that Demonology has with pairing Nether Portal, slash Pit Lord and Tyrant Reign of Tyranny together. Without Radius Fragment and Clash Trinket, Demo has solid damage profiles with bursts and things there, but nowhere near as good. Clash Trinket literally is double on-use trinkets for Warlock. Whenever you pop your Tyrant, your Infernal, your Dark Lair, it's a second on-use trinket, because you can pop your Radius Fragment and Clash Trinket and gain 13,000 intellect or whatever it gives you, some absurd number, and then pop your Nether Portal, pop your Pit Lord, pop your Tyrant. Tier bonus is rolling too. Pop a potion if you want one, and then get power infusion. You can see where I'm going, right? So the incredible peaks that Demonology have are not from Dreadstalkers, but they're from other abilities that build upon that and stack together, right? Dreadstalkers, on the contrary, I think actually lead to more sustained damage, although I agree it is very low and does need to be addressed. There's another image here looking at dog damage versus Tyrant, Nether Portal, peaking at 150, Tyrant at 150, and even imps at 75 here. Dogs are not as high as it may seem, right? Dreadstalkers overall play a very small role, overall in these peaks. It should be that, but there you go. In these peaks, merely contributing to Reign of Tyranny Tyrant power and a little bit of their own value, but sure, there's that. I would argue that Dreadstalkers are actually an important part of our sustain, but have been nerfed a bit too much, which has landed us in a spot where we are now, which is sort of true. They've been nerfed a lot. They were nerfed, I think, 2 months ago. They were nerfed a lot in 10.0. They were nerfed a bit during beta a bit. And to be fair, tuning around 3 dogs is tough, because you have the 3rd dog means that Carnivorous Stalkers basically has a 50% additional chance to proc whenever they chomp, whenever they melee. If this procs again, this procs again, which means this procs again essentially as well. So I mean, having that 3rd dog around does throw a bit more RNG into the equation, but at the same time, I think dogs are a pivotal, important part of our sustain. The more I've looked into it and everything else, right? And they've taken nerfs a lot over the past few months, and even past few patches, to where Demonology at this point is just sort of mediocre in Mythic Plus when it comes to AoE. Our sustain's not very good. Even when I'm running Demo keys on retail now, I hit my dogs and I expect big damage. It just doesn't happen. Like Demo's AoE is just not where it was before. You have an okay stat cleave profile, but the lack of AoE compared to where we were in S3 and S4 of Shadowlands, even early 10.0, is apparent, right? The issue with Demonology's absurd burst profiles that you are able to pair all the abilities together. Your Clash Trinket pair with the Radius Fragment is essentially double on use trinket effect, which you can then pair with Nether Portal, Pit Lord, Reign of Tyranny Tyrant, power infusion, potions, all of that. So that's what leads to these incredible peaks here. These incredible peaks are due to all of that. Now, at the same time, I do agree with them saying that our sustain's very bad, which it is. And I think what they're getting at here by saying that Shadow Bolt, we want to return Demonology to a place where Shadow Bolt is frequently cast. I think what they're sort of getting at here is that they want Shadow Bolt to be a larger portion of our damage, because it is one of our main filler / sustain abilities, but it's 1% of our damage. So I mean, shifting some damage back to Shadow Bolt is fine, I guess, but I don't think removing Demonic Knowledge or anything else or 3rd dog is where you want to be. And let's be honest, Fel Covenant is not fun to play with. Fel Covenant and Saxwells have been better builds than Imp Gang boss builds for a while, but no one plays them because they're miserable to play with, right? Either way, moving on from there, this just covers dogs. Keep 3rd dog around. It covers why our peaks are so high and our values are so low, all that kind of stuff. I strongly feel that Ripping the Portal should not be removed from the talent tree. I actually feel that they help our sustain damage by being a short CD-based ability that also gives us additional resources to fuel Hand of Gul'dan cast more often. Players also love being able... Yeah, this is wrong. I love being able to tell it into a 3rd Dreadstalker or a dog, or how it feels thematically. The how should be there. That's fair. As it relates so well to what Demonology is, which it is. Demonology is a master summoner. You summon pets, and your pets do damage. You don't cast Shadow Bolts like TBC to do damage. It's more pet-based, and Shadow Bolt and Demon Bolt are your filler spells that build resources to then summon more pets once again. But I do agree that our sustainability needs to be addressed, which will be discussed later on. So Demonic Core, Economy, and Demonic Knowledge. While I do agree that Demonology may have a bit too many Demonic Core procs at times in Dragonflight, removing Demonic Knowledge, which was Born of Blood, the conduit in Shadowlands, along with 3rd dog and Demonic Meteor, is likely a bit too much. Born of Blood, the conduit, was praised in Shadowlands as being one of the best additions to Demonology since its inception. It made the spec flow so much better in between Dreadstalker cast and Power Siphon cast and all that. Before the conduit was introduced, Demo felt a bit clunky in BFA and earlier expansions when you were lacking these core procs in between Tyrants or in between random casts here and there, but Born of Blood made that feel so much better. Born of Blood is currently, I guess was a 32% chance to proc a demonic core off a hand to Ghoulland cast in S4 of Shadowlands, conduit wise. Currently on retail, it is 15%, less than half of what Born of Blood was a mere 6 months ago. I guess a year ago at this point, but not too long ago. A third demonic core stack by having 2 talents and Rip from the Portal, being third dog, is also really exciting to play with. It feels rewarding having invested 2 points into Rip from the Portal. Dog trait, right? Cool. I put 2 points here in my talent tree. I get 3 dogs, which feels cool. Thematically, it's awesome. It leads to more, I guess, AoE in certain spots, but at the same time, I get a third core stack back from that, which feels good. It gives Demonology more mobility. It gives it more fluidity. Everything else. It feels fun to play with and rewarding when leveraged properly. Removing most of our demonic core generation abilities will shift Demonology to being a much more stationary caster, which I want to clarify that Demo still has core procs, right? Through dogs expiring, even though there's 2, imps can expire and give you 1, even when it comes to casting Power Siphon. You have core procs, but there's a good bit less, right? I could see a world where Demonic Meteor, however, I mentioned this here, could be removed. They put in this new talent called Dirty Hands, which is sort of similar to Demonic Meteor. And pulling Demonic Meteor sort of makes it so that you have a bit less shard, I guess, generation due to not having the random shard gen clause mixed in with, Demonic Knowledge procs, Demonic Core procs, with Third Dog, with Soul Conduit. It will remove that insane RNG high end of insane shard refunds, everything else, right? Sort of leveraging out a bit more how many cores you're able to maintain and things. Does that make sense? I wouldn't mind keeping Dirty Hands around, pushing out Demonic Meteor and keeping Third Dog and keeping Demonic Knowledge, right? But I strongly feel that removing Demonic Knowledge is a step back for the spec gameplay wise. If need be, tuning can be done around Rip from the Portal, which is Third Dog again, to give 2 Demonic Core refunds, down from 3. It's currently 1 per dog. At the same time, I don't think 3 is that bad, but Demonology's rotation feels great where it is right now, but I can certainly see where it may feel a bit too good when we are constantly overcapping on 4 demonic core stacks, which, to be honest, if you've played Demonology at all recently, you do overcap a lot on demonic cores to a point where it's a bit excessive. You really don't cast very many Shadow Bolts, so I get what they're trying to say and get at here, but I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing, right? So we'll see where that goes. And the last mention here, the changes to demonic core generation will also affect our 2 set from Aberrus, which syncs Grimoire Felguard to our Demonic Tyrant via CDR from Demon Bolt cast, which means less demonic core casts or procs from no demonic knowledge, no third dog, everything else. Your Grimoire might not sync with your Tyrant anymore, which is actually pretty big. Now, we did test this yesterday by smacking this dummy over here, and if you were in full stationary gameplay, all the above, your Grimoire did still sync with your Tyrant, but it was very, very close. You could tell it was much more finicky compared to what it is currently in retail, with more demonic core stacks coming in. So if that's the case, then your 4-piece from Aberrus becomes, I guess your 2-piece, I'm sorry. Your 2-piece becomes a decent bit less effective if you're in movement settings, Mythic Plus, spots where you can't just stand still and chain Demon Bolts via demonic core stacks over and over and over. Now, moving on from there, the next point here is Shadow Bolt and Fell Covenant. So, Demonology is known for being a master summoner. Like I said, summons demons to our damage, and we can support them by doing a bit of our own via Shadow Bolt and Demon Bolt and other random effects. These effects are filler spells through and through. While I understand the idea behind increasing Shadow Bolt's damage relevancy, while I get that, I don't think it fits Demonology, I guess what it is at its core, if it's too strong. If Shadow Bolt's 15% of your damage, Demo doesn't feel like Demo, right? Fell Covenant's been a hot topic for a long time, since Dragonflight Alpha, when it was, moved to a talent tree here. And I will say that having Fell Covenant in this row, going Demon Bolt into Fell Covenant into Inner Demons, actually feels really good. I should change this here. But Demon Bolt into Fell Covenant into Inner Demons actually flows well. For what it's worth, I don't think Fell Covenant is necessarily as hard to maintain if you have less demonic core stacks, because you're casting more Shadow Bolts, right? But it is still annoying gameplay. It reminds me of Malefic Affliction. Malefic Affliction AF, before they removed it a few days ago, right? Where if the buff falls, well, you got to cast 4 Shadow Bolts, stack it back to full here, and you lose so much damage. If you die, if you don't manage it properly, it's very punishing. and honestly not incredibly rewarding. It feels sort of clunky and bad to play with overall, right? But at the same time, it does feed into the Shadow Bolt, Demon Bolt damage increase they're going for. Bell Covenant, Sack Souls, even Soul and Power to a certain extent, all sort of fit that mantra of Shadow Bolt doing more damage. But however, they're not often chosen, even with them being higher simming talents on retail currently, over the Imp Gang boss, more pet-based builds that play into our armaments and expendables with Imp Gang boss because of how awkward they are to play. And I think this shifting towards Shadow Bolt is sort of doubling down on an already awkward playstyle that most don't really enjoy. So now I do think that they could change this to just be 2 stacks instead of 4. Have it be 15% per stack, 2 stacks, 20 seconds, and that's fine. It would feel much better to play with. But I'm not a huge fan of the Shadow Bolt playstyle being pushed as much. And yeah, hopefully it's, I guess, looked at or addressed in some way. Going on here to say a bit more. Let me see here. Potentially making 15% per stack with a max stack of 2 would help out a good bit. It also feed into the Shadow Bolt being a bit more relevant part of Demonology, which would help sustain damage. And I do think that once again, if they are trying to go for more sustain damage, Fell Covenant and Sack Souls and things, I mean, they do help with sustain to a similar extent. So does Imperator, whatever this is, Heavy Handed, Cavitation, Imperator, whatever it is, Dirty Hands. There's one more here somewhere too, I believe. All the new talents, what I'm getting at, they do help with sustain, but they're all also just very sort of empty, I guess bland a bit, right? And it doesn't really feel like Demonology. It reminds me a lot of Classic WoW in a sense, where this increases crit chance of imps, this increases crit chance of your Felgar, this Felgar does more damage, right? It's not incredibly exciting. It's sort of bland and generic, and it's just like, I'm just summoning these pets that, it just doesn't feel like what Demonology is, right? Third dog, casting a million Demon Bolts. That's what I want to do with Demonology, right? I do think, however, there's room for possibly some of these new abilities on top of third dog and other effects as well. I think a lot of that comes from possibly looking at talents that are a little out of date, possibly. Things like Doom, things like Kazak's Final Curse, things like Umbral Blaze, which to be fair is sort of new, but Umbral Blaze likely needs big buffs to its proc chance and damage to be relevant in the first place. It hasn't really gotten that since it was put into the game, as well as Impact of the Imp Mother, which has just been undertuned for a while, right? Even with the recent buffs coming in, and Stolen Power. All talents that could be removed, changed, altered in some way to fit these things in, like Imperator, Cavitation, Heavy Handed, Dirty Hands, while keeping around third dog, keeping around Demonic Knowledge, keeping around these core based effects, keeping around the spells and abilities that make Demonology feel like Demonology, right? I will say though that changing both Demonic Calling and Inner Demons to 1 talent point nodes is a great change. Both these being wherever they are, here and here, feels great. They were only taken for their effects, right? The passive double imps you have out, and this thing having a chance to make a dog instant cast, right? It's a great change making these both 1 rank talents. Awesome. Very good to see. One thing that's a bit annoying though as well is that Dread Calling has been changed to a rank 2 out of 2 talent, which it's 1 rank on retail now. It's a baseline 4%, 1 talent. It sits right here. The problem is that on top of this being now a 2 rank trait, which feels bad to invest 2 points in, just from 1 where we had it for all of the expansions so far, dogs were also nerfed. So you have 2 dogs, you're playing a nerf version of Dreadstalkers with 2 dogs instead of 3, and now you're paying twice the amount of talent points to get the same Dread Calling talent that we have on retail with 3 dogs at rank 1 instead of 2 dogs with rank 2. So that's a bit awkward. Once again, if third dog is brought back, I mean, it's likely just okay. I mean, it's great to have third dog around. You probably just deal with Dread Calling being 2 ranks, but it feels a bit awkward there. I'm not sure if it could be moved around somewhere, but it's a little awkward being 2 ranks. I'm not sure if they can fix that or look into it somewhere else, but it feels like you're having to invest twice the amount of talent points compared to 1 in 10.1 before to get a lesser effect due to third Dreadstalker being removed, which is pretty true. I do think that Umbral Blaze has potential, but likely needs a substantial increase to both its damage and proc chance for it to be competitive. If the talent is in a state of flux, meaning like, hey, maybe it's just sort of not really a great option anymore, there are better options, it could be replaced in this new location with Rip from the Portal, being third dog, because it is 2 ranks here, which will also give you a row of, so let's say third dog is here. Let's say Rip from the Portal comes back here and goes there. It's third dog into Nether Portal into Dread Calling. If you put this right here, it gives you a big dog row. Third dog into Portal and the Dread Calling. You can move Sack Souls up here where this is at for more sustained damage with like Shadow Bolt and Demon Bolt, which is easier to access too. Not as hard to get down to. Because one of the big points in this final row of the tree here is like, you typically either play 2 points in Sack Souls or a point here and a point here in single target. And once again, Sack Souls with Covenant sims higher end retail now, but no one plays it because it's annoying to play with, really. Some people do. It's annoying to play with. It's tedious and it's punishing, right? If you move Sack Souls here, put Dread Calling here, just delete it Umbral Blaze, and go Dread Calling, Portal, or no, put Rip from the Portal here. Put Third Dog here, Third Dog, Nether Portal, and put Dread Calling here. That's a big dog row. It's a solid juiced up row. You can get Dread Calling through either Tyrant or Portal, which means if you don't play Portal, you can still get Dread Calling easily coming out of Tyrant, which makes sense because Tyrant feeds pet extensions, bigger dogs, all the above. Thematically, it makes sense. And hey, Third Dog's literally called Ripped from the Portal. It leads into another portal. Thematically, it makes sense. It's cool, right? So there are ways to make this work, but once again, tuning and all that, we'll see where it goes, right? Other talents here: Heavy-Handed, Cavitation, Shadowflame Acolyte being up here, Imperator, and Dirty Hands. I'm calling it Imperator. It is what it is, I don't know. Are all interesting that they do work in ways to alleviate Demo's lack of sustained damage, which is true. I can certainly see the idea behind introducing all these abilities. They're all passive traits, right? Shadow Bolt, Demon Bolt damage increase, crit damage increase, more crit damage increase, and something else here too. They all increase passive damage, right? But the problem is they're sort of bland. They're a bit boring. They're a bit empty. You know, they will help with your sustain outside huge peaks and valleys that you have with Nether Portal, with Pit Lord, with Reign of Tyranny, and all that. But the problem, like I said, is that they're just sort of bland, and it feels really bad when you're losing third Dreadstalker, losing a lot of core refunds, which help with fluidity of the spec, mobility of the spec, all the above. For a lot of passive nodes, it just feels sort of awkward, right? Trying to speed this up here. We're almost done, though. So mentioning here, once again, these abilities. Heavy Hand, Decapitation, Shadowflame Acolyte, Imperator, and Dirty Hands are all interesting in the ways they work to alleviate Demo's lack of sustain, but I feel Demo's losing pieces of its core identity in Third Dog and Demonic Knowledge, Born of Blood, and Demonic Meteor, all the above, right? Most of the new talents are ones that cannot really be felt by the player, which it can't. You know, Third Dog can be felt. Demonic Knowledge can be felt in your rotation, right? They're just passive damage increases or crit buffs, etc., right? I do, however, feel that there is likely room for some or all the new talent additions while also retaining how Demonology plays with Third Dog and Demonic Knowledge. Other talents, once again, such as Doom, Kha'Zix, Umbral Blaze, Pact the Antmother, Stolen Power, are potentially revisited, overhauled, removed, and they just fit the new ones in the tree somehow in some way, shape, or form. As cool as Doom is, Doom, cool, sure. There's no Hand of Doom here, which would be cool to have around, but Doom hasn't been played. Doom's undertuned. Last time I checked, this was bugged. Umbral Blaze is undertuned by a good bit, unfortunately, still. Antmother's cool, but thematically it's cool, but it's not as good power-wise. This is just not very strong currently with tuning the way that it is. They have buffed it, and it's cool to see them giving some attention to it, but it's just not incredibly strong. And they're just better options, right? So I'm sure there's a way to shoehorn these new abilities in here. We're also keeping around Third Dog, Demonic Knowledge, and all the above. Or at the same time, just introducing new abilities that make you change your rotation or things that feel different, right? Add a Pit Lord button in, add some other kind of demon you can summon in, right? Summon a Shavara on a minute cooldown, I don't know. Make it so you can feel the summon or feel the ability that make it feel like Demo. Make it feel like Demonology. Make it an exciting button to hit and not a, passive crit buff, passive crit buff, passive crit buff, damage buff, and damage buff, right? That's what I'm getting at. Last bit here, moving on, trying to speed it up. So there's also potential to shift Graham Warlock's design from sharing a choice node with Reign of Tyranny to either a standalone talent in the demo tree or the class tree. Now I will say, I want to make feedback on this for 10.2, a larger patch to move Graham Warlock's design from this part of the tree to the class tree, because every class or every spec has this in their class tree somewhere. Either making this a non-choice node, putting it, I don't know, somewhere in the tree you can get both GWD and Reign of Tyranny, would help sort of alleviate some of your lack of sustain, because minute tyrant versus minute and a half, more frequent tyrants, there'd be peaks and valleys. They wouldn't be necessarily as high, and tuning would be required. You have to nerf Reign of Tyranny a bit. You'd have to. right? There'd be tuning needed for sure, but you'd have cooldowns, maybe a bit weaker ones, but cooldowns every minute or so, nonetheless, compared to minute and a half of Reign of Tyranny and all that. It's a possible option. Moving it in the class tree is not very likely. It takes tuning for all 3 specs. It's a huge undertaking, all that stuff, but it's there. It's an option. It's a possibility. I think the big thing here, though, that when it comes to Demonology, and I want to draw attention to this out of all the feedback the most, right? The main issue that exists, however, for Demonology is Nether Portal plus Ner'zhul's Volition, good lord, and Gul'dan's Ambition, right? It's this row right here when it comes to those incredible peaks and huge valleys, right? The valleys, bit of sustain can be bumped up again through other talents, but the huge peaks are from this row right here, being paired with Clash Trinket, with Tier Set, with Iridius Fragment, with Potion, with PI, with Bloodlust. This is where it all comes from, right? As long as you have Nether Portal, Pit Lord being these 2 here, and Reign of Tyranny, which, I mean, Tyranny isn't as bad, right? Or as egregious. Demonology is likely always going to have the potential to burst for absurd amounts of damage due to pairing all the cooldowns together. Having a Pit Lord around for Demonology is something that people have wanted for a very long time. It's awesome to have it around. I love it, right? But the fact of the matter is, it's locked behind Nether Portal. And honestly, Nether Portal rotationally is not very fun to play in prog settings. I played it for multiple tiers now. It's fun when you can execute it properly, but it's very punishing. Rewarding, but very punishing for movement. If you make a mistake and scuff your Pit Lord setup, it feels terrible. It's very, very punishing, and that is further exacerbated by Clash Trinket, Iridius Fragment, 4-piece, Potion, PI, Bloodlust, and all of that. Because the more summons you get out of your portal, the larger the Pit Lord is. So if you're going to really like look at just redesigning Demonology and addressing issues that it has, the best option to likely to alleviate these huge peaks you have in Demonology is to redesign this part of the tree right here. For a 0.5 patch, it might be a little ambitious, but there's a pun there. But at the same time, Nether Portal and Pit Lord are the main reasons as to why Demonology bursts so incredibly high. Outside of external effects, right? Pairing them all with external effects like Iridius Fragment, Tier Set, all that gives you that insane burst. Next tier, 10.2, when Clash Trinket's gone, you have no Iridius Fragment anymore, and maybe PI. It probably won't be as excessive, I guess, right? As excessive, but honestly, like, I wouldn't mind this row going and giving you a Pit Lord here. You have like Tyrant, you have Pit Lord, you have more Guillotine stuff here, or like Hatred, and a Pit Lord Empowerment, Pit Lord Empowerment, Pit Lord Empowerment, or make something here, some new talent, and give us a Pit Lord somewhere. Give us a baseline Pit Lord you summon that just does damage. That'd be cool. But with Demonology having, once again, this incredible profile of all these cooldowns paired together at once, hitting it once every 3 minutes with power infusion and destroying the world, you're going to have these issues. And the problem is that you can't really buff a lot of sustain-based abilities because the burst is so high. What do you buff, right? It puts you in an odd spot. Demo feels fun to play. I enjoy it, but at the same time, I don't really enjoy Nether Portal enough to defend it and keep it around as like, oh, this is a good idea. Because with external resources and borrow power this tier, you can sort of see how excessive Portal with Reign of Tyranny and everything else can become. Thanks for watching, guys. That wraps it up. This video is likely cooked. I'm sorry. It's 6 a.m. I'm beyond tired. I'm stuttering and slurring, and I am dead tired, man. I have done nothing but play Warcraft for the past 48 hours, and I am tired. But I want to get the video out to you guys, get the feedback out quickly. I'm sorry if I stuttered or whatever. It just spoke too fast. It is what it is. The link's up there if you want in the comment section for the document and all that stuff. And yeah, so let me know what y'all think down below in the comment section about all the feedback and just the demo changes in general. I know the video yesterday was out and there's a lot of discussion going on there, but at the same time, I don't know. This is a bit more targeted based on feedback points and all that stuff. So let me know. At the same time, like always, weekly wars, add-ons, and profiles down below as well. Twitch and Discord links if you want to grab them there. Like usual, one more time. Also, one huge shout out again to my patrons. Guys, for all supporting Patreon, thank you a million times. I really appreciate it. If you're looking at supporting on Patreon, should be a link up here as well as down below in the video description. And yeah, so I am curious to see what happens with Demonology over the next few weeks. I don't think, out of all the specs that Warlock has, I mean, AF, Demo Destro, and the class tree, out of all talent trees it has, I'm most surprised that Demonology got like an overhaul of sorts. I thought it'd be Destro, maybe Af, or the Clash tree, but I don't know. Glass half full. Blizz has been very receptive. Feedback, Dragonflight, they have 100%. It's factual, right? So hopefully this feedback or others through various sources are taken into account, and yeah, maybe we can find the middle ground here, and or just have a really fun version of Demonology to play in patch 10.15 and 10.2. So I'm tired, guys. I'm going to bed. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you all again soon. Peace.